Hey grade sixes. Today what we're going to do is we're going to move on from kind of solving and determining solutions to equations to actually talking about equivalent equations. So just a reminder, equivalent has that equa in it, which just means they're balanced, or another way to think of it is they're the same. So whenever you see equal, you're thinking of these are the same or balanced. And we're talking about equations, so we're talking about algebraic expressions with adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing, also using numbers, and we're also using letters. So we're moving into that world. So this is a word, or this is a statement that we looked at last lesson, and we're determining how to solve solutions. And it's basically just a number in an equation that makes the statement true. So let's go with something really simple. X plus 2 equals 5. The question ends up being, what number here would allow this statement to be true? And I think most of us would say, oh, what number plus 2 gives me 5? And we would write here x equals 3. Well, an equation is considered equivalent if the equations, so we're talking about two equations, have the same solution. So if we take that equation, x plus 2 equals 5, and we say, hey, the solution is x equals 3, let's have another one here. 2 times x plus 3 equals 9. The question is, are these two equations equivalent? Well, we'll know that because if the two equations, the x is equal to the same number, that makes this true. So for example, in this equation over here, when x was 3, this became a true statement. 3 plus 2 gave me 5. Well, let's try it over here. If x equals 3, if that makes it work, we're not sure right now. If it does, then these two equations are equivalent. So let's try it. So 2 times 3, we're going to try 3 for this, plus 3 equals 9. So order of operations says we do the multiplying first. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 3, does that equal 9? And the answer is yeah, 6 plus 3 does equal 9. So therefore, x is 3. This 3 works for x here to make this statement true. So these two equations, because both of their answers are x equals 3, these two equations are what we call equivalent. So it's really important to recognize that equivalent equations have the same solution. Well, let's flip to the next page. Okay. So last day we looked at some pictures. So pretend like this is my balance here. So balance is show equivalence, okay? So let's say over here we've got a bag. Not really sure how much is in it. Let's just say there's x in it. And we got a second bag. We'll say x is in it. And over here, we've got some blocks. So in this case, we've got 8 blocks. So the question is, how much does x equal here? So you can see we've got 2 x's over here, and those 2 x's equal 8 blocks. So how much does each x count for in terms of blocks? And you can see this is pretty straightforward. If we've got 2 x's, you can see clearly one of these x's would be equal to half of the blocks. And you can see x would be the same as 4 blocks. Now here's the cool thing about equivalent equations. If you add the same number of blocks to both sides, the equation will stay equivalent. So for example, let's take our original one. So we have an x and we have an x, and here's our scale here. Here's our balance on this side. We have 8 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Let's say on both sides we just pick any number. Let's say we add 4 to each side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right now, my scale wouldn't be balanced. Okay, so the way to balance it is I need to add 4 to this side, because if I add 4 blocks to one side, it tips the scale. So I need to add 4 blocks to the other side to make it not tip. So look at my new equation. The equation in this one was 2x equals 8. And the answer for this, 2 times what number gives me 8? We knew the answer was 4. I've got a new equation. 2x plus 4 now equals, count these up, 8 plus 4 gives me 12. What number, when you multiply it by 2 and then you add 4, gives me 12? Well, do you know what? If you add the same number to both sides, it keeps the equation equivalent, which means the solution will be the same. The x will equal 4. So let's try it. Let's try it. 4 for x. 2 times 4 plus 4, does that equal 12? We're curious, does this work? Well, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 4, does that equal 12? And the answer is absolutely. So 4 is the equation. So therefore, this equation here is equivalent to that equation there. They both have answers of x equals 4. So this is the cool thing, okay? And I want you to just make a little note here. If you add, and this is also true for subtracting, the same amount to both sides of the equal sign, I'm going to say the equation, will be equivalent. Really important idea. If you add or subtract, so I could have done this, we added 4 blocks to each side to make this happen. We could have added 5 blocks, we could have added 10 blocks, we could have added 100. We could have subtracted 2 blocks, we could have subtracted 4. As long as I did it to both sides here, it creates equations that are equivalent. Show one more here. So let's go back to our 2x. Oops, let me just erase that. (2x) equals 8. So here's our balance. Got my 2x's over here. Got our 8 blocks. Now, we looked at adding and subtracting in the previous one. If you added or subtracted the same number to both sides, we create equivalent equations. Now, the same thing is true as for multiplying or dividing. If you multiply or divide both sides by the same number, you get an equivalent equation. Well, how can I show you this? Well, let's say we double both sides. So that's doubling is the same as multiplying by 2. So if we double 2x's, it creates four x's. So here's my new equation, 4x. If I do something to one side, I need to do it to the same. So if I doubled my left side of the equation, I need to double the right side. So my 8 blocks will now double and become 16. So the question is, 4 times what number gives me 16? And the answer is, we recognize 4 times 4 equals 16. So x must be 4, which is the same answer as this one, which makes these two equations equivalent. So if I multiply both sides of the equation by the same number, I create an equivalent equation. The same is true if you divide both sides of the equation by the same number. So let's say, for example, I had my balance beams over here, but instead of doubling both of these, I'm going to divide both of these. I'm going to half it. So let's divide both sides by 2. So I start off with 2 x's. If I divide it by half, I'm left with just 1x. If I take my 8 blocks here and I divide them in half, I'm left with 4. And you can see my new equation is x equals 4, which clearly x must be 4. It is an equivalent equation here. So I hope this really gets you going, grade 6s. There's some heavy stuff here. I'll work with you lots. If you need lots of help, I'll work with you a pile here to make sure you get this. Have a good one.